Right, they were professional.
Debbie. Debbie.
I don't know what's happening.
I'm in a state of emergency. Debbie took all my papers.
David, how you doing, man?
How you doing, HD?
I'm good. Come in for this, or you come in for open? Good. Ever been to this before?
No, first time. I know they do it every year.
Yeah, they do.
Good.
They do a conference in like late September, early October, and I don't know if they do this type of thing, but yeah, every year during the December, the midwinter one, they're trying to get more people engaged.
Absolutely.
It's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Glad you made it.
All right, thank you.
How you doing?
Everybody's good.
Son doing all right?
Yeah, he's
I
doing
hear really good stuff about your kid, about your son.
Yeah, he's doing his thing in theater. I'm proud of him. Not a good football player at all, so.
Well, that's not for everybody. Not for everybody.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad he's doing well.
I appreciate
And
it.
your daughter's doing well?
Yeah, she's doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good. You ready, bud?
I'm ready for you. 1, 2. One, two. I just received permission from my board chair to get started. And so I'm going to ask if our panelists will take their seats at this time, just as soon as. Thank you so much. First, let me say good afternoon and welcome to our third panel today. We want to thank our board chair for her vision for convening these panels so that Texans can be truly informed and have even more and greater input on the decisions that are made that govern our educational system in the state of Texas. This panel is entitled Engaged and Empowered Students, and that is very, very near and dear to my heart as a former principal and a 35-year educator. I think students will always be the main thing. So let's keep the main thing the main thing. Now, I heard my colleague earlier talk about an all-female panel, and I certainly appreciate her humor in that situation. And yet I have the dubious honor of having 3 school superintendents on my panel, and that's great, but I also have a student on my panel, and I think that's even better.
Yeah.
So I have 4 individuals that have come today to really enlighten us, to give us greater insight to this aspect of this portion of the long-range plan. Again, my name is Lawrence Allen. I represent part of Houston, Harris County, and Fort Bend, District 4. There are a number of my colleagues in the room. I don't know if you have had a chance to recognize them. I see my board chair has her leg up and she doesn't really want to move around because she's struggling, but I'm going to ask if she would wave her hand. Our board chair, Donna Maharaj, here. And the other members are spread out throughout the audience. If you would stand and let everybody see you in the audience, I would truly appreciate it. I see Tom, I see Perez, I see Sue, and all of our members are here. Some are going on. We truly want to say thank you for holding in here with us, and I truly believe we've saved the best for last. And so I'm gonna do a little housekeeping here, and I first have asked my panelists if they would introduce themselves, and then they're going to come back, and I've asked if they would speak to you just briefly about the real rationale for the invitation, a portion of that plan that speaks to what the work they're doing at home or what has affected their lives in a special way. And then at that point we will begin some Q&A, and we're going to do it a little differently because I'm going to probably ask 1 or 2 questions, and then I'll turn to the audience so you can ask questions. And so since you won't be able to ask questions in between the panelists, that's why you have the note card and the pen. So if you would jot your questions down and prepare to ask questions after we finish the presentations, we will do so at that time. I know that we don't have Vanna White in the room today, and so our mics will be manned by 2 of our SBO members. And in the area that they're standing in, we're going to ask if you would actually make your way. That's like what Sue, you see the pretty lady on Red Day in Texas? Sue will be standing there, and she will be holding that mic. And if you are on this side of the room, if you would make your way to Sue, versus Sue having to go all over the room, we're asking if you have a question, if you could make your way to Sue, and then you will be able to ask your question from mic number 1. I already have given Barbara through the mic double duty. She will be in this area, and she'll have a mic. And all I'm asking you to do at Barbara, right there with the red blazer on, is to make your way to where she is, and then you will be able to ask your question. I have just some general names. These are some very, very powerful individuals, and I'm going to ask Bryan if he would introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Bryan Williams, and I'll stand up?
Yep, stand up.
Oh, stand up. Okay. Thought I could just sit and talk. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Bryan Williams, and I want to make a correction. I am not the superintendent of Spring Branch ISD, Spring Branch Independent School District in Houston, Texas, but I serve in a role or capacity as community superintendent. And that's very similar to an assistant superintendent role where I support campus principals and principal development and leadership, and we work with campuses to drive student achievement forward. Prior to this role, I'm four months into the role. I was a principal at Spring Branch Middle School for 8 years, and so I'm very happy to be with you here this afternoon with my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Bryan. Please receive Bryan. Give him a round of applause. You know, as I was looking at, as Bryan was working in the middle school capacity for a number of years, and he's going to speak about things later on, and recognize that we talk about student engagement, and I asked him earlier, when we talk about student engagement and empowering students to truly be involved in the decision-making of their education, is that a K-12 conversation? Or do we think about just high school, or what did that look like at middle school? And even if you wanted to see a framework of student engagement at a level where they are truly treated as partners in the educational process, what would that look like on an elementary campus? My next panelist is my good friend and longtime buddy. He had invited me over to his house and sometimes, so I might have to change that introduction later on. But Mr. H.D. Chambers, please introduce yourself.
H.D. Chambers, I'm honored to say I serve as superintendent of schools for the Alief Independent School District. I've been there going on 8 years. If you're not familiar with Alief, we're in Houston, and if Houston were a clock, we're at 9 o'clock west. 9 o'clock west. We'll get into the content earlier, but the reason I enjoy these types of opportunities to visit, particularly with the State Board of Education, is, I don't know, probably going on 7, 8, 9 years ago, the relationship between the State Board and the superintendents probably wasn't that great. And in some cases it was our fault, in other cases I will blame State Board, but it seems like when Barbara was chair and we started going through some policy changes and then Donna King was appointed chair, it seems like over the last 7 or 8 years that we've kind of forged and have changed that relationship and those abilities to work together. I mean, we agree on every single thing, but at least we would sit at the table and talk. And so people like Pat Hardy and others who have been there a while and have been in the seat before, I can tell you on behalf of the superintendents that get engaged, we appreciate that. We appreciate the openness and the willingness to talk to us and listen to us. And we don't for 1 minute expect you to do everything we ask or everything we do. We don't expect you to agree with everything we say, but you're always willing to talk. So that's why I have no problem coming comparing and sharing, at least from Alief's perspective. And I've got one trustee here, and I've got 7 bosses. I've got one of them here. So Ms. Natasha Butler. Natasha is one of our trustees, and so just point of personal privilege. Natasha, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And an age-old question will be answered at some point during this session, is that how to actually keep children from falling through the cracks. And that expert that we have with us today is our superintendent from Santa Fe. Superintendent Walls, would you introduce yourself?
I am Leigh Wall, superintendent in Santa Fe ISD. This is my 12th year as superintendent. Honored to be there and also honored to be here. I appreciate the work of the state board in preparing this wonderful plan and document that will be a great guide for educators. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And my guest came all the way, I guess, let me see, she came all the way from Texas A&M today because she's a freshman in college. And so we know that's extremely special for her to miss class to be with us today, but I wanted her to come and introduce herself, Ms. Garcia.
Well, howdy. My name is Kari Garcia, and I am a state vice president for the Texas FFA Association this year. I was elected in July, and it's just been a wonderful ride serving 127,000 of our agriculture education students here in Texas. I'm just going to correct you because I'm a sophomore at Texas A&M.
That's my
Please
fault.
blame Donna for telling me.
Yeah, I told her the wrong thing. I told him the wrong thing. Sorry.
But it's so good to be here. I love teachers, I love board members, I love all things education, and it's probably because I've been in the education system for the past 14 years, maybe. But I'm passionate about student development, and it's just it's really refreshing that they want students' perspectives on this panel and just student perspectives in general, because I think it's important to hear from the students that are experiencing it. And so I'm a proud product of Texas education, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I really want everybody to relax. I'm inviting you now to the family reunion because I want to have just a barbecue conversation with you at this time.
Right.
If you are an educator, everywhere you go, on vacation, if you are anywhere you go, you want to look and see what the schools look like, what's going on there. And if you have two educators in your family, it could be Christmas, it could be Hanukkah, it could be whatever. Guess what you're doing? You're having a conversation about education. And then you say, I promised myself I was not going to do this anymore, that I would start that but today I want to invite you into a family conversation about education. And first, we're talking about building students' ownership and empowering students through personalized learning. You know, building student ownership. I think every parent works on that piece of it to say, how do I get my child to take ownership of their education? Some people tell you that you need to back off at a certain point and let them take, ownership. And then the school district is looking at methods and ways to assist students in becoming practitioners, actually, and owners of their own education. So I'm asking if our speaker, Mr. Bryan Williams, would come forward at this time and enlighten us on student ownership. Yes, sir. You can come to the mic if you okay. Oh.
Either one.
Okay, I'll start with this one. The reason I'm here, and I think part of the reason that I'm here, if you remember this journey, our superintendent hosted a State of the Schools address to our community. Spring Branch Independent School District, Dr. Scott Muir is our superintendent. And in that State of the Schools, that's a yearly address where we celebrate the accomplishments and the achievements of our district. At that event, one of my students, who's now a 7th grader, was a 6th grader at the time, and I won't give her name, but she had an opportunity to highlight the work that we were doing at Spring Branch Middle School. And Donna was in attendance at that event, and she was impressed and mesmerized by how a 6th grader at Spring Branch Middle School could articulate how she was engaged in learning and invested in her learning, owning her learning, and how our campus personalized learning for her and a group of students that we piloted a program with. And so I'll give you that journey, and I have 5 minutes to do so, to talk about that experience. I'll start from a high level to talk to you about our district's vision and goal for every student in our system. We have an overarching goal in Spring Branch ISD known as T24. And that's the whole idea that we measure success in our district, not just by graduation, high school graduation rates, but we measure success in our school system by what do our students do once they leave our system. We want to measure and track their success after they earn their diploma. So we look at how many students have entered the military successfully, how many students have earned a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, and that's how we track the measure of our success. So I wanted to begin there, that's our district's overall arching goal. And our goal, and our board strongly supports it, is that we will double the number of students who are earning a technical certification, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or entering the military. When we first started tracking that data, we were at 38%. And you might think that that's a low average or a low percentage, but when you compare it nationally to the state, we're actually above the state and national average. But that was not good enough for our system. Even though we are trending above the state and above the national average, we are in every child district, which is one of our core values, and 38% is not good enough for us. We want every student to be successful, and once they leave high school, to be on track to enter one of those fields. So I wanted to start at that high level. In 2016, our district was invited to participate in an experience called the Collaborative. And there's an organization called Transcend in the New Schools Venture Fund who selected 10 learning organizations across the country. And they were school districts in Oklahoma, DC Public Schools, Houston, Texas, and some charter school networks. So we had 10 learning organizations from the East Coast, the South, the West Coast, and the Midwest that were a part of a year-long journey to unpack this whole idea of personalizing learning and experiences for students. And so we partnered with this organization, and for 1 year, we participated in an experience to transform the learning opportunities that we afforded our students. So these 10 learning organizations learned about the whole idea of school redesign, which is really taking school systems through a process to use human design-centered thinking to really look at the experiences that we're providing our kids. So with that, there are 3 buckets of information that we impact. Number 1, we take a look at innovative schools across the country who are personalizing learning for students. We take a look at how they are investing in their students and how they're creating opportunities for those students to be invested and empowered and engaged in those learning environments. So all throughout the year, we visited those campuses. The second bucket of information that we impact is we're looking at learning trends and effective learning approaches that really provide an opportunity for us to personalize learning for our kids. And then the third thing that we wanted to unpack and really study is how do we take human design-centered thinking and apply that process to what schools do. And so it's the whole idea of really looking at our industrial model of education, which has been pretty successful for a good portion of our students. But when you look at the diversity of students that are in our school system today, that industrial model of education is not working for everybody. And so it allows us to go through a year-long journey to look at those 3 bodies of work and take that work back to our learning organizations, to take that work and work with our stakeholders to really look at what opportunities are we providing to our students currently, and what can we do to provide innovative, out-of-the-box experiences for our kids to personalize learning. So with that year-long experience that I was a part of and our district was a part of, our district really wanted to operationalize the definition of personalized learning. So with that journey, we were able to operationalize personalized learning with 4 pillars. And we defined those pillars with anytime access to learning, anytime, anywhere access to learning, with the whole idea that learning does not start at 8 o'clock and end at 3 o'clock. That kids can have access to content and learn outside of the school day. The second pillar is holistic, actionable data. So we want kids to not only be exposed to high levels of learning and to be exposed to standards that they're going to be assessed on, but we want them to be able to track their data and know what it is that they have strengths in and what areas they have opportunities for growth in. The third pillar is student voice and agency. We want students to own their learning and have choices in how they demonstrate their proficiency. And then the fourth pillar, we did student actionable holistic data, anytime, anywhere access to learning. And then the fourth one is individualized rigorous instruction. We want kids to sweat, we want them to have a productive struggle, and we want them to be exposed to high levels of learning every day. So with our district going through that journey, we were able to define what personalized learning is in our district. And if you Google or look up personalized learning, you'll see a variety of definitions around that. But for our district, those are the pillars that we wanted to define and operationalize. Anytime, anywhere access to learning, holistic, actionable data, student voice and agency, and then the third one.
Student voice and agency.
Individualized rigorous instruction, holistic, actionable data,
Anytime,
anywhere access to learning, and then student voice and agency. Students get to choose. I gotta take a look at my notes just to make sure I've got it.
Yeah, that's it.
Anytime, anywhere access to learning, individualized instruction, holistic, actionable data, and student voice and agency.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure I got it.
You got it. You got it.
What we did, and I know I'm past my 5 minutes. Two more. What we did on our campus is we assembled a team, and this is what is getting at the report. We assembled a team of teachers, administrators, and parents, and we took them through a year-long study of what is our current reality at Spring Branch Middle School. And so we took them through the design thinking process for us to take a look at what's the current reality of our campus, and then where do we want our campus to go so that we can create different experiences for kids that are outside of the traditional approach. With that, we started with empathy. And a lot of times when we bring programs and experiences to school and kids, we implement them without asking the people who are going to use them and who are the end users, which are our parents and which are our students. And so that body of work really allowed us to hear and understand what it is parents want, what it is kids want, and to take that feedback and that qualitative data to look for common trends and themes about what were their aspirations, what were their goals, what were their current realities, what would they like to see in our school. And we talk not only to current students, we talk to past students, current parents, past parents, and we took our entire school through that entire process of design thinking to create a micro school to personalize learning for our students. I know that was a lot, and I went over my time.
Well, thank you, Bryan. Thank you so much. As you formulate your questions, and you can direct them when we get to that portion directly to Bryan Williams, so you'll know that we have a lot of questions. I saw a lot of people writing, so be prepared. We have a lot of questions for you to unpack that presentation. We also want to take a trip now from Spring Branch over to Alief ISD, where they are actually doing some great work that we need to hear about in connecting children with career pathways. I had this conversation, started this conversation with Superintendent Chambers years ago when he was out in Stafford Municipal School District and preparing children to do things in school that would benefit them and give them an opportunity to have a living wage as they went forward. So he is, I consider him an expert in this question about connecting students to careers and graduation pathways. HD, could you come forward and talk to us about that?
So this is the big elephant in the room has always been, if we really want to prepare students to have a meaningful opportunity after they leave high school, then there has to be meaningful opportunities within the K-12 system.
Yeah.
And I would argue, I've been in the business for 34 years, I've been a suit for 14 years. I would argue that the K-12 system for years was almost counterintuitive to what our desired outcomes were. We wanted students to be able to go into the workforce. We wanted students to go into the military. We wanted students to go into higher ed of all forms. But the K-12 system for years wasn't designed to allow that. And to the industrial industry model that we still have, or whether people believe it or not, our entire model is still based on the 1900s industry model. We just overcome it. You know, we just work around it. And part of what we're doing in Alief, part of the way in which we're trying to achieve that in Alief has a lot to do with the policy changes that have taken place over the last 7 or 8 years. And it's allowed kids to have more of a voice in the courses they take, and more of a voice in the actual direction they want to take courses. So, as you all know, there are opportunities for kids to pursue many forms of pathways within each of the high school endorsements. But before they get to that point, before that little 7th grader or 8th grader is asked to decide what do you like right now, we have to have conversations, and I don't believe it is out of bounds to have conversations with third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders about what is it you like. You're not asking them what are you going to do the rest of your life. You're not asking them what are you going to major in the rest of your life. But you are having conversations about what are the things that you are interested in. And here's where we sometimes, after we ask that question, we don't deliver. We don't move forward. And this is one of the areas we're trying to improve in my school district. Is when they tell you what they are interested in, there has to be a place for them to land to begin moving there. So if they tell you they want to be, we have kids that tell us all the time they want to be scientists, or they want to do, we have to have opportunities for second, third, and fourth, and fifth graders to have true STEM experiences. So in my district, and I haven't gone into it, but we're 54% Hispanic, 29% 30% African American, 13, 14 Asian, and about 2 or 3 white. But of that, about 88% of them are economically disadvantaged, and about 45% don't speak the English language. So many of them are coming to our school district. They're coming to our school system without exposures to some STEM opportunities and meaningful STEM programs. And so what we've attempted to do is we put things in place that allows these younger children to experience, here's what it's like to be in a science class other than just sitting at a table with 4 of your classmates and working on typical science type, memorization type issues, as opposed to getting involved in true STEM partnerships and true STEM relationships. And that has led to where we are with our secondary kids. We offer, and I don't know the numbers, so don't get me the line up here, but we offer in the neighborhood of 80 or 90 different pathways within the endorsements, and many of them are within the STEM endorsement, so that students can take the courses. Our taxpayers have committed funding for the students in which we're talking about. We have a nice facility we opened this year that has 14 to 16 different career cluster possibilities. And so we're trying to legitimize, and I guess what I'm saying is that we're attempting to give the students who not only going through higher ed or into the workforce military, but those students who know kind of what they want and what they're interested in at this time, we're trying to legitimize their desire. And I'll give you a couple of data points that you may or may not be familiar with. So in 2014, the class of 2014 across the state of Texas, in May and June of 14, every high school senior graduated. The percent that left their high school graduation and enrolled in some form of higher ed the following August was somewhere in the neighborhood in Texas, somewhere in the neighborhood of 51 to 52%, slightly more than half. In Alief, it was around 58 or 59%. And one of the reasons for that is because we have a really good relationship with our community college. Everybody was kind of patting themselves on the back that we were 8 or 9 percentage points higher in the state. And someone asked the question, well, what about the other 40%? Where are they? And no one knows, no one knew. Those are the students that we're attempting to provide opportunities to go into the workforce type programs, credential certifications. And if we've done anything, if the state has done anything, the state board deserves credit, at the time the policy makers deserve credit, we begin legitimizing opportunities so that things like Spring Branch's goal, or our goal, we all have the same goals, we call them different things, but we're all attempting to get to the same place, so that those things can actually be realized. Because until the policies were in place for us to do this, it was counterproductive for us to do this. And I'll end by saying this, one of the things that I'm most proud of in our district is we are slowly, we're not there yet, but we're slowly creating a culture of almost, STEM for all. And I don't mean to proclaim STEM for all as the solution to the world's problems. But when you start asking students who have not been exposed to the types of opportunities in a STEM program, that helps them in so many other areas that in many cases have nothing to do with engineering, has nothing to do with math or science, has nothing to do with physics or chemistry. It has to do with just thinking. And we try to put them in a facility in which they can stand up and walk around and use their hands and work with others. And so I'll end with this. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named John Medina. Everybody heard Dr. Medina out of Washington State University. He wrote a book called Brain Rules. If you have never read Brain Rules, you need to read it, Lawrence. Okay. You and I need to read it. So Brain Rules, Dr. Medina is one of the world's renowned neurologists. He's not a brain surgeon, he studies the brain. And he wrote a book, and there's 13 brain rules. And the first 4 rules, real quickly, the first 4 rules that they know about the brain, they don't know a lot. We don't know a lot about the brain, but we know this. The brain was developed, designed to solve problems. We know that. It is designed to solve a problem. It was designed to solve a problem with another brain. In other words, another person, It was designed to solve a problem with another person in the upright position, in standing up. It was designed to solve a problem with another brain in the upright position while moving. Those four things they know. And if you take a look at where the College of Education is at Washington State and where the College of the Study of the Brain is, they're 180 miles away from each other, meaning they never talk. So if we are going to truly do the things you guys are trying to do, what Leigh's trying to do, what we're trying to prepare for this young lady, we have to put them in environments and situations that help them in that not just for them personally, it's just the human, it's the way we are. And there's not a single person in here who would rather right now not be sitting down, texting on your phone, or taking notes, or pretending you're taking notes, or whatever you're doing. You'd rather be up and moving, interacting with another brain, solving a problem. So we have to move, all of us have to move away from the traditional industry, which we still are. We still have it in Alief, we still got it in Spring Branch, got it in Santa Fe, but we're slowly evolving there. And with the board's help and assistance as we create policies to allow that, that's what we're attempting to do in our school district. So appreciate your time. If I went over,
That's Mr.
you owe my time with the...
That was Mr. H.D. Chambers from Alief at the middle school district. I've been trying to crack this egg for a long time, how to crack this egg, how to actually keep children from falling through the cracks. So a multi-tiered support system for children. What is truly involved, what's involved in a multi-tier support system? So we've traveled just from right outside of Houston, and we're going to go over to Santa Fe and bring Leigh Wall to give us what's truly involved in the support system.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity to be here and part of this process. And the long-range plans work on student engagement and empowerment. I'm going to shift a bit in a different direction from these guys. We are going to talk about multi-tier and multi-layered support, but in a different way with the context for which we've experienced in the last bit of time in Santa Fe ISD. So the work of the committee around this focus in regards to student-centered systems and resources to support that, of course, includes safe and connected schools and classrooms that are designed to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's students. So our experiences in Santa Fe ISD have provided us a unique perspective and a determination to the strand and the realism of the demands on our families, schools, and communities. While we all strive to provide the very best for our students and prepare them for our future, this is a time for us to invest fully in our children in this area of engagement, advocacy, and support in many different areas. One of the things that stood out to me in the long-range plan was within the strand of personal health and personal support, and of course the needed tools, resources, and trainings that will be necessary for students and teachers as we move forward. The vision in this long-range plan for all school systems to actively engage students in learning requires healthy individuals and environments that must include tiers and layers to identify and connect support services for students, whether it be academic, behavioral, mental health, emotional, social, relational skills. So all of these components are necessary in our education world in order to do the best that we can for our kids. The importance and understanding of the relating of students and adults and empowering all of those in learning and achieving and accomplishing goals is really dependent on well-being, on health and safety nurturing environments in our schools. In Santa Fe, we have increased awareness of the significance of fully integrating the support, whether it's counseling, mental health, emotional, social, emotional well-being, and educational experiences for not only our students, but also our staff. I heard that addressed in the last session a bit. So it is something that multi-layered, multi-tier doesn't just involve students. Obviously, it involves the adults in our building as well. This requires an intentional focus and additional support for making these things happen and making these things available for teachers and students in our schools. Also, would love to focus on, just a moment, touch on the observational report of the voices and challenges from Texas. I thought that was especially interesting. In the current practice of generalizing and representing, categorizing students, children, and schools with our standardized test and ranking systems, it should be given thoughtful consideration and understanding the stresses and conflicts with that and what that brings on in the cultures and environments of our schools for our students and for our teachers as well. So the emphasis on the individualization and the personalization, meeting the needs of individuals within the schools on a personal level, within society, is also a critical piece of that. Just a few data points as well. Based on the recently released Federal Commission on School Safety report, and I don't know if any of you have seen this, but it has some startling stats in it. 1 in 10 children in the U.S. experience a serious emotional disturbance. The rates of youth depression, anxiety, self-harm, and tragically suicide is climbing. 1 in 10 children. That's to me staggering. These children do not perform well in our schools, and they have difficulties at home and in the communities. And many, this is another kind of startling statistic, many of the mental illness begins at the age 4. So when we look at systems of support and identifying, preventing, all of these pieces and these strands, it does become a very heightened awareness that this is an area that does require, not just as an additional layer, but does require our attention. Engagement and empowerment also includes an intentional design for developing and strengthening student leadership. I think we have a student here who's going to show us a great example of how important that is in wrapping these pieces together. So as educators, we do have to respond to society needs and integrate that into all that we do for our students. Students do deserve the best and to have effective schools and high quality systems of support that are multi-layered, both in school and out of school. Our system should be designed to meet the needs of all of our students, and one area that we have focused on in Santa Fe ISD most recently is multi-layered systems of support, emotional support, obviously academic support, and in regards to tiers and layers of adding support based on need and using data to support that, but also in the area of multi-tier layers of support in the emotional, personal health, well-being area, and also in incorporating, and kind of speaks a little bit to our Spring Branch partner here, partnerships. So multi-layer also, multi-tier also, not only inside of school but outside of school. So we've had the opportunity to experience this and utilize support systems from our local agencies, state agencies, federal agencies, whether it be our regional service centers to support with our counseling, with training, trauma training for teachers, agencies, whether it be state or federal agencies that help also bring in support, so that when you start looking at this concept of student empowerment engagement around layers of support, the layers are not just within the schools, they're not just within the classrooms, they're within the communities, and the aspect of safety, well-being, and education isn't something that you do alone. It's what we all do together, and so to incorporate that piece is probably one of our most recent lessons. Is that's a piece that cannot be left out, and it's also addressed within this plan as well. So thank you.
Superintendent Walls. Now, I want you to really get the juices flowing, because we've got a lot going on and we really are deep in the conversation. The one thing that's most important is all of this is summed up with its effect on our students. Effects on our students. How are our students affected by the opportunities that schools, by schools involving students in opportunities where they can increase their skill set, and in organizations or like FFA or other opportunities in school, what is the effect on those students? And so, Kari, is it Kari? I thought it was Cardi B when I saw it earlier, but it's Kari Garcia. It's come from Texas A&M to share with us at this time. Kari. It's Kari.
Yeah. I'm going to come over here just so I can have something to place my portfolio on. Don't worry, I have a timer.
So I'm not gonna. So when I start looking at the SBOE plan for long-term education, what stands out to me is the overall vision. And so when I was little, I did the spelling bee among many other things that I was trying to do to find myself. And I just remember I would stand up there and kind of like that Aquila and the Bee bit where she starts hitting her leg to remember. I would do the same thing, and I remember one of the most difficult words for me was intentional. Just for some reason, I spoke Spanish most of my elementary school years, so a lot of English words were very difficult. But I developed a love for words, and intention is all that comes to mind when I start looking at the overall vision. The overall vision for student engagement and empowerment is that all students are actively engaged in and equipped to be invested in their own academic and personal growth to achieve educational, civic, financial, career, and interest goals. Now, to some people that probably seems like a lot of words, but to me, who loves words, knows that this is an all-encompassing goal. That it isn't afraid to stretch out into what it's actually wanting to do for students. And my perspective on this vision comes from my experience with the Texas FFA. So the mission statement of the Texas FFA is to develop students' potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agriculture education. It is, too, a very encompassing mission statement because it's a wholly formative organization. It's not only focused on bringing kids STEM experiences and connecting those to the real world, but caring that these kids have an experience of personal growth through leadership and through many challenges that come from attending contests and conferences. A little bit about our organization. When we started looking at the 3 points within our mission statement, the way we develop premier leadership is through leadership development events. And these require students to prepare in a very intense manner sometimes to be able to execute their jobs in front of judges. And then leadership development events tend to be a little subjective. So you have to be very impressive on a personal level. Very, very impressive. And so exposing students to this challenge is awesome because it helps them experience the importance of likability and the importance of trying to be in front of people and not being afraid to speak in front of them. Another way that we help our students become premier leaders is through officership experiences. So students get to be officers at the district, at the chapter, district, and area level, and then even to the state level where I am now. And then there's one level beyond me, and that's national office. It's a wonderful opportunity to be a part of a student-led organization because you are very much in charge what happens in the organization. And I think that just creates for students an environment where they're actually responsible for things that happen. I've had to run conventions by myself and banquets and contests, and the adults are kind of looking at me like, what are you gonna do? And yeah, that's done a lot for me because when I get to Texas A&M and they're asking me to do project management for environmental health and safety compliances in one of my classes, I know exactly what to do, and I become the head of the project. One way that we develop personal growth, so moving to personal growth, is through conferences and professional challenges. Over the first semester of this year, I was able to grow so much because I was poured into, both professionally and personally. And what that looks like is just you're surrounded by people who care about you, what's happening in your personal life, and it's not compartmentalized. It's not separated, it's not organized, it's a little messy, but we're all messy. And it's all encompassing, so you become a person who's awesome professionally and personally. And then lastly, career success is through career development events, also speaking development events, which are similar to leadership development events, but they highlight different talents in front of judges. Career development events are different from leadership development events because they're not subjective. They are very much what you put on the Scantron is the right answer. And so, you know, you're preparing for exams, you're preparing for what it's like to work in the agricultural environment, and you're actually getting results for it. And so if you're not studied, if you're not prepared, and you're not practiced, you're not going to do well. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the Texas FFA, about the National FFA organization, and what we provide for students. Like I said, it's similar to the student engagement and empowerment vision because it's encompassing our personal goals, our personal development, as well as our professional development. And I'm here to provide insight on organizations, both extra and intracurricular, as well as student experiences. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. We're going to move into the magic wand portion of our conversation. If you had a magic wand, and it's now 2030, since our long-range plan is a vision that we hope is in fruition by 2030. It's now 2030, and we have implemented what you're doing in Spring Branch, what you're doing in Alief, and what's going on in Santa Fe, and students are engaged in programs and in their learning. What would we see as the outcomes academically and relationally to all of our panelists?
I guess that's a very fair question in terms of some of the things we've asked for. How do we know if it's working? You know, how do we know if 60 by 30 was actually effective? I would hope that I would be able to walk into an elementary. In 2030, I would like to be able to walk into any school, and see some of the things that we see going on in some of our career center type facilities across the state. When you walk into a career center or a CTE center or whatever you want to call them, and you see kids that are engaged and doing the things I talked about earlier, as soon as you leave that facility and you go to your most comprehensive high school or your middle school or your elementary, you lose a lot of that. And like I said earlier, principals and teachers are having to work twice as hard to create those environments because they're being they're being influenced by the standardized test and the preparation for it and all the sanctions that go along with that. So it's difficult for them to balance that. So I guess the short answer to that question is I'd like to see classrooms that are really engaging, not engaging using the same strategies and same pedagogical skills that we're using right now. It's actually where you see little ones working just like you see these older kids working in an auto tech shop or in a digital media center. Those are the things I would like to see. In addition to us, and from a data perspective, 60 or 70% of our high school graduates coming out either ready to go to college without remediation or going into the workforce with a meaningful credential or entering the military. That's that's kind of where I am, Lawrence.
Thank you, HD. Superintendent Wall?
So I'll just add to that. I'd love to see those very same things in preparing our kids for future opportunities, but then also our preparing an engaging community and engaging schools where communities are also engaged in their schools and their learnings, and that includes local accountability type measures and things where you truly do get engaged in what those outcomes should be, and everybody is on board for that. And you do have with that the support, the many systems of support that make strong schools, and then provide students all the opportunities they could possibly want. But in addition to that, just one more component, and that would be strong support systems for teachers. That's from professional learning to resources, funds, all of those things that give them the tools they need to help kids soar.
Yeah. I think what I would add is at a recent Spring Branch ISD board meeting this past Monday, we recognized a young man who was a success story for our district. Several years ago, he came to the country not speaking English, and we were able to recognize him because he was one of my first middle school students where I served as an assistant principal of a middle school campus. and he was a part of the Gear Up program that we had partnered with our district. And I remember him fondly, and that class fondly, because we had such a partnership with our community and with other agencies, where we had an opportunity to expose all of our students in that particular grade level to colleges and universities and other experiences that they hadn't been afforded to. And we were able to track those students and provide those experiences from middle school all the way through high school. At this board meeting, this particular young man and his mentor were recognized because of their relationship one with the other and the success that he was able to experience at coming to this country, not speaking English, and being able not only to graduate high school, but to complete his college degree and be employed by his mentor and be very successful. So we recognized that young man this past Monday for just being someone who epitomizes the goal that we're trying to achieve for all of our kids in Spring Branch ISD. And so what I would hope to see are more success stories like that young man. I'd like to see gaps in performance among our student subgroups and subpops narrowed, reduced, or non-existent at all. I'd like to see every student engaged and connected to school with a significant adult so that the issues that we currently see surrounding school safety don't continue to emerge and we continue to have issues with those. I would expect for us to not have at Spring Branch ISD 38% of our kids achieving, but 100% of our kids achieving success once they leave our school system. And not just Spring Branch, but all the other districts that are represented here as well.
It's 2030, Ms. Garcia. What would you like to see?
Yeah, I was actually going to go back to, it's 2030, and I think we all really want to see student success, just students excited about their learning. I think the way I see that happening is more intracurricular organizations, and like student council for me wasn't substantial until I had a leadership class, because then I could connect everything that was happening outside of school with everything that they were teaching me in my class. And FFA was the same way. Everything that I was learning within my classroom, I was able to connect outside of the classroom. Our kids are really focused on building resumes and being career ready, but it's more of a stressful environment. Like it's like, oh, I have to fill out my resume because then they're not going to think that I'm prepared. And sometimes when you put things on your resume, they don't mean exactly what they are. Like we want to standardize what being a part of an organization is. That way, an FFA member here and an FFA member like on the other side of Texas had a similar experience that was also like wholly formative. And so I want to see kids engaged in organizations that are doing a lot for them. And I want to see it like count. That way they're not wasting their time being a part of an organization so their resume looks full. But what did you get out of that organization? What's the mission statement of that organization? Are you a true product of that organization? Did you come out better for being it? And I think with this development plan, we're going to see wholly formed students. So you'll see students that have great character as well as great learning habits, kids that are focused in STEM, but also just wonderful individuals who know how to interact with the world around them. And I think in 2030, that's what I want to see.
Outstanding, outstanding.
Hey, Lawrence.
Yes, sir.
One thing to piggyback on her, you killed our responses, okay? But this may be more than it's not answering the question, what would you like to see, is what would I not want to see? You know, I don't want to go into a school or a classroom where she's in, or 2030, maybe it's her daughter or her son, being prepared for some standardized test. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it now, but if I can get it done by 2030, then so be it. But I don't like it right now. And the other thing, think about in your mind, in your own mind, our society has defined who's smart and who's not very narrowly. I was speaking at a function the other day, and it just hit me right between the eyes. I've never thought about it this way. Well, I've thought about that, but I never thought about it this way. They introduced the president of Rice University, and someone kind of leaned over to me and said, "Man, that dude is smart." And I just remember, what makes him smart? By whose measure is he smart? Well, man, he did this, he's got this degree from so-and-so. I said, yeah, but if I needed my back brakes fixed, can he help me with that?
Probably not.
No? Well, then he's not too smart. My point is our society, and educators in particular, myself included, we have grown accustomed and we have become addicted to identifying some students are smart because they can pass a test and we're going to put an A or a label on this school or this kid's report card or whatever. And it's very narrow and it's very strict. I would hope by by the fall of 2019. June, maybe.
June would work.
I'm serious, I would like for this shift in who we use that term so loosely. Well, he's smart or she's not, or he's not. We use it so loosely, but it is stuck in our society. And I'd just like to see a differentiation as to how we define who's smart and who's not, and legitimize the ones that right now we don't currently include in our definition of smart. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We are about to turn to our audience, and so as you are preparing to ask your questions, I have my colleague now to my left, Sue Milton Malone, and she will circulate the room. We'll bring the mic to you. So if you have a question, when I turn around, it's just like, let's make a deal. If you would stand and so I can identify you, and then we can take questions from our audience. If you don't want to ask a question out loud, you can certainly take one of the index cards and fill it out, and you'll get a response at a later time. But at this time, is there a question from one of our audience members today? I have one right here, Sue.
I don't really have a question, I have an observation. I'm Lynette Greenhoff from the Dallas Regional Chamber, and I was a member of the steering committee that prepared the long-range plan. But one of the things I wanted to tell Ms. Garcia that's really important is the person on our committee that was the most insistent that vision say that students ought to be responsible for their own learning was the student member of our committee. A really fabulous young woman who was a senior in high school at Weatherford High School, but she was the inspiration behind that, and she would not let that die. She wanted that in the vision that students had to be responsible for their own learning. And it was really powerful for all of us to be with her, and to see that it transitioned to you is really exciting to see.
Any response?
I'll just say this. I would encourage you, if you're not in a school, if your school district has like a career center where students, and they have to go to it, check the attendance and the tardies for those classes and those programs versus the English 3 and English 4 or Algebra 2. We opened a building this year and we have kids driving there. We have some buses taking kids, but the kids who drive there, I was told by the teachers, they're there early because they're excited about being engaged or owning their own learning or whatever, however you want to refer to it. But I find it amazing if they were gonna, if they're so excited to get to those types of classes, but when they're 5 seconds away from an English class, they find every route they can to avoid it. That ought to tell us something, all right? Right?
I'm going to cheat just a little bit because I've got, I know some of the backstories on some of these folks that have visited their various facilities. Bryan, if you could talk to us about what are the steps to student ownership? Like, how do you see that in a practical way? Because those students that I saw, those 50 students that I visited with, were very much on top of their own journey. Like, okay, I only need this in order to outperform. I'm like here, I'm just barely meeting the standard, but I want to get up to this next level. Like, how do you do that? Because they were so into the ownership of this thing. It was kind of amazing.
Okay, so I'll answer it this way. We started a micro school within our school, and we provided, We started a micro school within our school. We provided an experience for 50 of our families to have a different experience outside the traditional Spring Branch Middle School model. We were hoping for 50. We had 100 families sign up. So to answer your question, that's where we started. with providing families with an opportunity to be exposed to something different. The second step where we started is we went through the design thinking process to really unpack what is it that students and families want, what's their current reality, what's their aspirations as it relates to the schooling experience that we were providing for their children. So we wanted to hear from the voices of families that we serve, what was working, what was not, how could we better prepare their kids. The third step is we started with a team of educators, very qualified, quality teachers who were out of the box and innovative, and we gave them permission to think outside of the box and design a micro school experience that was unlike anything that we were offering. We gave them support, we gave them time, we released them from constraints that were existent at our school. So that was really key first, to find some talented educators who could think outside of the box and design learning experiences for our kids. What it looks like on a practical level for kids to have voice and ownership in their learning, our teachers really worked collaboratively together to design units of study. Some of them were interdisciplinary, and they were cross-curricular. So they designed units of study that had multiple pathways for kids to arrive at mastery at the end of the unit. So it would look like at the beginning of the unit, students would take a pre-assessment. And on this pre-assessment, it measured all the skills and the standards that kids were expected to master at the end of the unit. Within that pre-assessment, there were standards that were tested at what we call the developing or the basic level, the proficient level, and the advanced level. So after a student takes a pre-assessment, they get the results back, they conference with the teacher, and they're able to look at what are their strengths and their opportunities for growth within a unit. While they're conferencing with the teacher on that pre-assessment data, they set goals for where would they like to be at the end of the unit. If they scored at the proficient level, they're going to set a goal to take it a step further to land at the advanced level. If they scored at the developing level, they're going to set a goal to score at the proficient level. If they are hitting multiple standards at various places within the unit, they're going to set a goal. If they're at a standard in developing, they're going to set a target to be at proficient. After they take that pre-assessment and they set goals and have a pre-conference meeting with their teacher, digital content is uploaded into our It's Learning Management System platform, where kids have multiple pathways to begin a unit at their own pace and arrive at the end of a unit. And that's really where the choice came in. So kids were able to set goals based on their pre-assessment. They had multiple pathways for arriving at the end target of a unit, and then at the end of a unit, once they reached their targets, they completed a post-assessment. And so they were able to measure where they started and where they ended. Now what was different about this experience is that if you were to walk into any of our classrooms in the traditional experience, you could ask kids, what are you learning? Why are you learning this? Why is it important? And you can walk into most schools in America and ask that question. And a lot of our kids can't articulate it. But if you were to walk into our micro school experience, kids could tell you not only what they were learning, they could tell you and identify which standards they were learning at. They could identify whether they were at the developing, the proficient, or the advanced level. They could pull out their data binder and their data tracker to tell you, this is where I started, this is where I ended on a post-assessment, and they were able to articulate that to any adult who came into the classroom, and even to take that information home to their parents. So that's where the student agency and the personalized piece comes in, with kids owning their data and being invested in that process. So I hope that spoke to the question. Okay.
Let me go here to Stu.
Thank you. I hear a lot of really great strands here: student engagement, own your own learning, how do we decide who's smart, who's setting the standards. But I'm not sure I've got them all integrated in my mind, and that they might be getting each to a different spot. And I have to say that as a parent, and this might go to Dr. Wall's As a parent, sometimes I feel that my kids, even though they were successful in school, it's not until they got out in life and had some hard knocks that they're understanding the concept of ownership of their destiny and their responsibility for shaping things. And then contrast to Ms. Garcia, so your experience of perhaps student engagement is a lot of approval from adults and from your peers about what you did and how you enjoyed it. But I'm not sure that that's the same thing as understanding the responsibility of owning your learning. And I'm not sure just understanding where you are on the continuum of grading or student achievement is owning your own learning. So how do you all bring those three concepts together?
That's actually a good question.
So thank you. Great comments, great question. So, sorry. So I think when I'm thinking of trying to pull them together and talking about all the components that make for strong classrooms, strong schools, it's system support. It's systems. It's building systems where student advocacy is there, where student leadership opportunities were there, where student voice is there, so that when you're building your systems, whatever the system is, whether it's an inter-school type setting or college and career path settings, comprehensive high school, elementary school, that the systems are inclusive of all of the components, whether it be the student voice at the lower grades or the student voice at the higher grades, the engagement, so that when we're looking at schools, what you'd love to see in the future, it really is systems that provide those opportunities for engagement from everyone. Students are engaged, staff is engaged, parents are engaged, community is engaged. We are all here together working on the same piece. That's why you hear from me and Superintendent Chambers, that's the difficulty that we struggle with the standardization requirements that we have to work with. So when you talk about standardized testing, it is in complete contradiction, as you kind of pointed out, that kind of conflict to personalizing, individualizing, meeting the needs, adapting, transforming. So when you look at systems, they should be transformative. They can't be the same all the time. You have to look at individual communities. We have a strong FFA in Santa Fe. Our kids have super experiences with leadership, with voice, with all kinds of opportunities that within our community is important. They may not see that in inner city Houston. Then again, they may. So system support, system involvement, system incorporation of all the components, and not just some of the components. I think that's sort of the hard thing for all of us to kind of get a handle on how we build the systems that include that. So.
I also want to answer a little bit. Personalized learning is a little intimidating to me because I don't know what personalized means or what all it entails. And being like just recently in high school, you're good. Being recently in high school, I was very much in charge of like the classes I wanted to take, but I didn't always know that like all the classes were gonna kind of go into like my degree plan, like my plan or my career pathway. I was kind of just taking ag classes to take them. So personalized learning kind of intimidates me because it makes me think that as a student, like I have to know what to do and I have to be a self-starter. And I think it's coming more from a place of facilitating to students so that they can make decisions to put them in a place of they are personalizing their education. Because I can't, like I, as a high school student, wouldn't be able to design a plan for myself to get to college, and then it's really hard. And like I am studying environmental science, but I want to be an environmental lawyer. And it's kind of strange because you have to go study environmental studies and you have to prepare for NAILSAT. Then you get to go to law school. Like it's really weird, but I knew I wanted to do this since I was in 8th grade. I just don't see every student having like that foresight. That's just my hesitation, that personalized learning is a little intimidating unless we organize how it's facilitated to students. And that personalization means that they're empowered to choose where they go with their education.
So,
yes, Ms. Garcia, I have a question specifically to you.
Yes, ma'am.
If you could spend half a day with second graders, what is the one thing you would get them doing?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I think earlier when Mr. Chambers was talking about having opportunities in elementary school, like light bulbs are going off in my mind because I just heard about a school district that was inviting women engineers to come and facilitate to students at the 4th grade level, specifically women, because psychology and like cognitive ability tells us that like women at the 4th grade level, whether or not they believe that they are talented in science, technology, engineering, or math, will tell you whether or not like they'll end up majoring in that when they get to college. And so if they start not liking science, technology, engineering, or math, which I mean, yeah, I didn't like math when I was in elementary school. If they start not liking it at that age, that closes off any possibility of them majoring in that field when they get to college. And so what would I do with second graders? I would, well, it's real easy for me to say like, oh, I would like take them to go spend some time with some animals. But really, I would get to know them, and most importantly, I would encourage them. So I'd facilitate an awesome workshop on like believing in yourself and how there are dreams for you that are super far away, and because there's a learning circle. So there's one circle that says what you're comfortable with and what you're comfortable doing, and then there's a circle outside of that that says this is what challenges me. And then there's a circle beyond that that's like, I can't even do that right now. I shouldn't even be thinking about that. And so at one point, state office was in my largest circle. But then I started doing things that challenged me to the point where becoming a state officer wasn't so far away. And now becoming a state officer, which was once a dream that wasn't really possible for me, is now in my comfort zone. It's now something that I know. And so I would spend time motivating elementary kids to know that they can do it. Because there's so many things offered to you, but like I said, it comes from that responsibility, that sense of, you know, I need to do this for myself, or I'm going to choose to work this much because I want it that bad.
thank you so much.
Just drop the mic. Just drop the mic up there. You want to work in Alief?
Hi, my name is Sarthak, and this question is directed to HD. So you mentioned the importance of career centers and the lack of vocational training and certification. So how can individualization further improve this process? Or what is the biggest impedance for students to get the certification or training when they've decided they want it?
Let me answer your last question first. Right now, one of the larger obstacles is the state accountability system. It's getting better, but we are taking, in many instances, students' attention away from whatever their desired occupation or credential certification away from them because they've got to pass an end-of-course exam. So that's one thing. The ownership of this, what we're seeing, in Europe, a top 1%er in terms of the way in which you have seen and reacted to your own journey, your own life. The kids are coming out of 8th grade, not sure what they want to do. The key to that is just letting them look at it and see it with their own age kids doing it. And one of it's hard. It's, you know, I'm probably not a good example, but most of us, when we were filling out our schedules for high school as an 8th grader, or telling the courses we didn't have a clue. We were pretty much putting down whatever they told us to take. Well, now that you got, in my opinion, the centers and the credentials that go along with some of the programs in those centers, now we're allowing not only to look at a list of classes they're taking, but now we're letting them actually experience, to the degree where it's possible, what it's like to be in that environment, what it's like. And so as the kids go through the program, as they go through whatever it is, they're going to understand real quickly whether they like it or not. But the impediment right now is, there's two. One is what I just mentioned. The other is that in many cases the credential certification is not, you can't get to it before you graduate high school.
Right.
And so you've got to put in the time, if you will. And our accountability system right now does not recognize that. And I don't want to sit here and bash the accountability system, but it does have an impact on kids who go through that process and the barriers of which it causes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. As a follow-up, how can technology be used to better improve the accountability system and the certification? Or what ways do you think it would be best to implement it?
Well, technology and with accountability is not so much that they're mutually exclusive, but I would argue that there has to be there has to be a more robust way for students to demonstrate they're ready to graduate high school. Let's be honest, the accountability system is simply in place to tell a young man, a young lady, a mom, a dad, or a future employer that this child has met all the expectations and standards of Alief ISD, the state of Texas, all right? So there's many ways for students to demonstrate that. Right now, we don't give them that many options. Like I said, it's a test and there's a handful of options right now. We have to be more robust. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to be in areas in which the economy demands it or there's opportunities. But I don't know that technology is going to answer that question or going to solve that problem. But to the extent that that's an impediment, that's where, if technology could solve the problem, that's where I would like to see it solved, is broadening this definition of a student who's ready to be graduated from high school. And it kind of back to my SMART comment. There's different ways to demonstrate that your K-12 or your pre-K-12 experience has prepared you more so than right now than the state of Texas is allowing. So, is that helpful? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. As a rural school board president and a retired probation supervisor of 25 years, and now currently working for a workforce development board in rural West Texas, I wish this room was full of school board members, administrators, and teachers, because this is profound. What we're seeing. And as a parent of two Aggies, awesome job. But this is about developing people that can go out and be employed and be service providers and be tied to their community, and that's so important. They're not just workers. They're not just doing a career. They have a mission that comes from the second grade. And we're building those characters and leaders and people, and that's utilize your workforce boards, educators.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
This kind of hinges back to your long-range plan. So about 3 months ago, I spoke at this tri-agency event. It was the Texas Workforce Commission, it was TEA, and Higher Ed Coordinating Board. And the audience was about this size of the room. In the audience were workforce representatives from the various regions of the state, some on the Workforce Solutions, some on the Workforce Development Board. There were employers, a handful of educators, not that many. But in the middle of the conversation, a CEO of a manufacturing company out of Baytown, Texas, stood up, had the microphone, and he said, listen, with all due, not to me, he was talking to the panel of the tri-agency, he goes, with all due respect, why am I sitting in the audience? And why am I a guest to this conference as opposed to being the group who's putting the conference on and you sitting in the audience and listening to us tell you what we need? Think about that for a second. And I was part of the group up there saying, this is what I'm doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this. Well, big deal. The employers in the room were saying, that is not meaningful to us. Not to me. He was talking about all these things the agency's talking about. And he was applauding the districts who were talking about career centers and all that. But I guess my encouragement to the board, to the extent this falls within your desires or your ability to do this, But the employers across the state of Texas are not being heard.
I agree with that.
They are not being heard. They are going to functions like that event, and they're being preached to, and they're being talked to, and they're being told what is going on to help them do their thing. But they're not being listened to. And so that's kind of a, you know, to your comment about this room should be full, actually it should be full of a bunch of educators listening to the workforce and listening to people like you tell policymakers this is what needs to be done and this is what we expect.
Let me say something real quick. I'm gonna come back to you, but because we're going to run out of time, so I want to apologize in advance because Sue has several questions in her hand, and I know others have questions, but we won't be able to get to all of those questions. We're gonna hear this comment. We're gonna take 2 questions that Sue has already in her hand, and then I'm asking my panelists if they would be gracious enough to hang around a few minutes for individuals who may want to ask you a personal question. But if you will just kind of hang around this area, and if someone wants to ask you a question, would you do that for me? So we can extend our time by having the graciousness of our panelists to just kind of hang around if you have questions specifically for one of them. So we're going to continue, and we're going to go to Ms. Garcia so she can make her comments, and then we'll go to Sue.
So my comments are regarding that idea of having employers list what they want. And one of the, I think, things that is starting out in career and technical education that is really impressive is certifications. So they're starting certifications and they're connecting with businesses and asking whether or not these certifications would be valid to these businesses. Do you want somebody at the high school level engaging in these certifications, or whatever they are, and would you respect it when it comes to hiring them? That way these certifications are worthwhile, and I think that's a really cool example of how to take what employers and businesses want and apply it to our education system. And I think CEV Multimedia is leading the kind of the charge in that.
Thank you. Sue?
All right, how are you preparing students with the knowledge/skills to participate in school or district decision making?
Well, one example I can use is when I first became principal at Spring Branch Middle School, we did not have a youth advisory council or a principal's advisory council. So I formed a council of students who could be the voices of our students, and I would meet with them on a regular basis and allow them to give me input on the decisions that were being made. And so I sought their input on a lot of decisions that were made. The second thing I would say is when we're interviewing teachers for our campus, I involve students in the interview process. So they again are the end users who have to learn from the teachers who are employed on our school. So I allow students to be a part of the interview process and to give their feedback on candidates that we bring in to interview. So those are just a couple of examples about involving students.
Just real quick, I've got a student advisory committee that's made up of high school kids. I have a middle school one and I have a 3rd grade one. My favorite one by far is the 3rd graders.
That's awesome.
Those kids. Awesome. Don't ask them what they think because they will tell you what they think. But that's the way. You know, we've had bond committees and other types of committees where the community's involved. We involve kids quite often.
I just want to add too, are those advisory committee boards equal opportunity for students? Because at my school district, it's not an opportunity for students. Like they get chosen by.
Come on now.
They get appointed, I guess, by different like members who like already exist, and so I think getting a diverse population of students to advise you is amazing because it gives students who wouldn't otherwise be recognized by the teacher as, you know, GT or their top student to get their place on those boards, and it's a more holistic perspective of what's happening in your school district.
That is
right on.
So
the
good.
short answer to that question is we don't do a very good job.
Got Sue one more time. Sue?
All right. We talked about the standardized testing. We've talked about it all day. And what formative and summative data would be available to measure accountability without the standardized testing?
much time you have? Those, I'll quick. There are multiple assessment measures that are both formative and summative that you can use on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a month. It doesn't matter. I can, if you want me to name some products, I can, but there's several. They've been approved by the Texas Education Agency. Those are ways in which I wish, particularly for our younger students, that I wish the state of Texas would include more as a part of the system. Not just and when we say standardized tests, that's, the way the test is used is another issue, but in terms of what types of assessment, there are multiple assessments that are aligned with high quality standards, meaningful standards, that we could use, and I would use them in terms of your formative question. You could use them however often you want. We do it right now. Schools across the state of Texas are doing it right now. It's just not recognized in the accountability system. So we also have to, as a part of that, we put benchmark exams twice a year to mimic what the April or May star is going to look like, which in my opinion isn't telling us a whole lot about the child and their performance. So the former principal here can speak to that. The former student can speak to that. But ma'am, there are so many ways to do this that could be done, and it's been. I'll just stop right there. I'll just stop right there. Yeah, don't even get me started.
Georgina, don't get in my program.
Don't get it yet. Don't get in the program.
Let me say at this time, just for the sake of time, thank you. Let me thank the panelists, if you would, at this time. To travel to Austin to engage in this conversation is heartwarming, and I want to thank each of you for your dedication to giving back to others and to empowering adults in the field so that we can do a better job as we work with our children. As we come to the close of our day, I did want to give our board chair an opportunity to say something, and after her final words, we will be dismissed and you'll have an opportunity to meet with our panelists individually.
I really want to thank everybody who stuck with us all day and came to the panels. They were just amazing. I hope everybody agrees that all of the panels were so informative. We realized that a lot of folks that came to Midwinter are ready to go home by the time Wednesday comes, and we understand that. And you know, they want to get out of here. They've already been at a convention 3 days, so this is something new or something to add on to an already long week. But the idea of the way we do this is we obviously record, we take all the presentations, and we put them online with links, and we'll have them separated into panels so it's not one big long video. It'll be separated by the different panels so you can get right to the area that you're most interested in or most interested in sending to a colleague. So we'll be sending you information because you registered with us. We'll be sending information via email to let you know, hey, all the videos and everything's up. We will let you know. And we would highly encourage you and hope that you will continue to get out the word about the long-range plan, because the visions and recommendations in that are what we'd like to see. We talked about it all day long, where we want to go. These are visionary. This is a visionary aspirational document. It is not a we want to see X by X time. It's not that kind of telling you, setting a specific goal. It's about, let's talk about what the vision really is. How you get there might be lots of ways to get there. But we want you to get the word out, to encourage your trustees to look at the handy-dandy Appendix E, which I will point out. There were copies of it out on the table there, which you might take. That Appendix E, which is at the very end of the report, is a list, it's a call to action list. And it lists the various responsibilities of the various groups, whether it's boards of trustees, whether it's administration, whether it's educators, parents, workforce, whatever it is. It has it in columns, and it takes the recommendations, and it shows you which recommendations really speak to which groups. And so we hope that the boards of trustees and superintendents all over the state will kind of just go down those recommendations with their own trustees and say, where can we look at these recommendations, and do they speak to our district, and how can we move forward in any in meaningful ways that would bring the visions that the board set out to life. So again, thank you for this day. Thank you for coming and sticking with us and getting the word out about the long-range plan. And thank you to all our panelists. Thank you so much.